Great stuff by Errol Spence. You know, he could have made the fight a lot easier, but he chose to do it like Porter. He wanted to beat Porter at his own game.
Those are the words of Lennox Lewis. As he said, you know, this is after Errol Spence beat Shawn Porter, okay, by split decision. Wasn't an easy fight. Very tough, very competitive fight. And Lennox Lewis said that, hey, you know, Errol Spence could have done it easier. Okay. But he wanted to beat Shawn Porter at his own game. First off, let me counterpunch Lennox Lewis. I have a lot of respect for Lennox Lewis. I think he's one of the best that ever laced up the gloves. But I also understand something as well. This was put out by, I don't know, one of his channels, right? An Errol Spence channel. I'm not even going to give him any notoriety, but they were saying that to say what Terrence Crawford did versus what Errol Spence could have done. All right? Based on the evidence that Lennox Lewis said and mentioned about Errol Spence, that, hey, he could have made it easier, but he wanted to beat him at his own game. First of all, that's bullshit. Okay? That's bullshit for Lennox Lewis for saying that, and it's bullshit for this smaller YouTube channel. No recognition to them. Why? Because Errol Spence fights one way. He can box. I can't say he can't box, but he's a brawler. He breaks you down. That's what he does. If he can't do that, he's just not going to do that. Okay, he's not been in there with the person or the people that has actually challenged him to that degree. Yeah, he's been in there with Kell Brook, Shawn Porter. Those are his toughest matches as to date. Dennis Uga showed him another dynamic, but, you know, his face gave out. Okay, he got hurt, you know, and there's a lot of other stuff behind that, you know, or whatever, which I won't get into. It's not important. Errol Spence breaks you down. And my thing is, if Errol Spence would have, he could have, he would have done that. Would have, could have, should have. If he would have known to do something else easier than to fight Shawn Porter tooth and nail, he would have done that. Counterpunch. So what Lennox Lewis is saying is Lennox Lewis is congratulating the guy that's the undefeated, the PBC guy, the Al Heyman guy, the same guy that signs his checks is the one that signs Errol Spence's checks, that same guy that does that. So this was a political or a politic response. He could have made it easier in there, but he wanted to beat him at his own game. He don't know that shit. You can't make it easy against Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter ain't going to make it easy for nobody. And if you think you can beat Shawn Porter by boxing Shawn Porter, okay, let's see that. He fought Shawn Porter because Shawn Porter fought him. You're not going to bring water to a firefight all the time, especially if you have a drop and someone has a full-blown burning down house like Shawn Porter had that night. Okay, and if it wasn't for the 11th round and the perfectly timed hook that Errol Spence dropped on Shawn Porter, that fight probably would have been a draw or a split decision loss for himself. Let's just keep it real. But they're saying this shit, and I know this is a Errol Spence supporting channel. They're saying this and they're using Lennox Lewis's words only because they were like, well, Terrence Crawford stopped Shawn Porter and he was the only man on this planet to do it. Okay? He was the only one to do that. And because he was the only one to do that, they're trying to save face. Like, wait, if Terrence Crawford can do that, but Errol Spence fought Shawn Porter at an earlier time and couldn't do that, what do you think that means? Oh, I know. Let's use Lennox Lewis's words to imply that Errol Spence could have stopped Shawn Porter earlier and fought him another way, but he decided to fight him this way because he wanted a new, better challenge and he wanted a more exciting fight. Bullshit. Let me prove it to you. If that was the case, he wouldn't have fought Danny Garcia like he fought Danny Garcia. Counterpunch. He fought Shawn Porter because he had to fight Shawn Porter like that. Why didn't he choose to do that shit with Danny Garcia? I hit you, you hit me. Because Danny Garcia didn't have the skills that Shawn Porter had. That's why. Plain and simple. That's easy to understand. So what Lennox Lewis is talking about, I'm going to use his own words. I don't know what you're talking about, Lennox. I don't know what you're talking about. Shawn Porter had him. Shawn Porter had him fighting. But anyway, yeah, but I just had to counterpunch this because when I heard it, I'm like, look, Errol Spence fought a good fight, a challenged fight with Shawn Porter. If he would have fought him another way, he would have lost. That's just like Anthony Joshua trying to outbox Alexander Usyk. It was not going to work. Okay? Just Shawn Porter's style and Errol Spence's style matched up the way it matched up, and that's the type of fight that we had. It wasn't because Errol Spence could have fought him in another way or an easier way, because again, and for the final time, if he would have had an easier way, and he would have fought him an easier way. But anyway, you guys tell me what you think of Lennox Lewis's comments on Errol the True Spence concerning the win over Shawn Porter. Of course, please subscribe, and you guys been Counterpunch. Peace!